Well, what's going on that's so important? The Attorney General's in town. He just wrapped up a public event in Fort Worth. He's going to be in Tyler at 6 o'clock tonight, and he joins us right now to explain himself. Welcome back, Ken Paxton, Attorney General, State of Texas. What brings you to town?
Well, we have a speaker's race that's pretty important to the state of Texas. For the last 16 years, the Democrats have block voted, and a few Republicans go with them, and they end up controlling the speakership, which then ultimately controls what types of legislation get through. And the problem with that for Republicans is a lot of our key priorities, whether it's election integrity, school choice, property tax relief, the things that Republicans care about don't get through because the Democrats control the speakership.
Yeah, and that's people address similar complaints to me, like why do we have Republicans in every important position in this state and we still can't get things like school choice passed? And I think this is kind of the answer to that.
It's the answer because it only takes a few Republicans to join the Democrats, 15 or so, to cut a coalition. And then those 15 Republicans get key positions. But what they do is they help the Democrats block the things that we care about. So we have the governorship, we have the Senate does a great job, and then we have the House, which is a key component of that holds everything up that we all care about.
All right, Ken Paxton, you have another event coming up tonight in Tyler at 6 o'clock. It's on the Holiday Inn, South Broadway, the one across from Best Buy and whatnot. That's my hometown. Who needs to go to that?
I think Texans who are interested in what's going on in the state. I mean, this is as important an issue as we've got in our state, because if we can't in a week, the House convenes a little over a week, convenes, and they're going to pick a speaker, and that's going to have a determinative effect on whether we're going to pass good legislation over the next 2 years. We've been blocked for 16 years, and we have the opportunity, like we haven't had over the last 16 years, to change that. So I think if constituents show their interest and they talk to their state representative, we can get this done, because ultimately they're the ones that decide.
Well, when I announced you were coming on the show, David and Forney said, ask Ken Paxton to address the Kaufman and Henderson County State Rep Keith Bell. He supported Dade Phelan. He voted to have you impeached, and he's been a thorn in their side for 18 years. I get a lot of that, though. People have identified their local guy. They don't like him, and they just can't get rid of him. Yeah,
and I think because so many people they're not aware of the problems that Keith Bell has created. He does it quietly. He comes back and tells his constituents he's done all this great stuff, but he doesn't tell them the truth. He doesn't tell them what he blocked. He doesn't tell them that he mostly worked with the Democrats to get stuff done. And the media doesn't cover that normally. I mean, you do, but most of the media won't tell the truth about what Keith Bell is doing. This is a time that we're exposing that, and I'm hoping that exposure, that transparency will ultimately will win out.
I noticed you had some criticism for the FBI officials who said the New Orleans attack wasn't terrorism. Why don't you relay to the people listening your first reaction to that?
Well, it's hard to believe. I mean, they barely done an investigation. I'm shocked that they quickly concluded that. In my mind, it looks like a terrorist attack, and I'm not exactly sure. They never really gave an explanation of why they are saying that, but I want to know more. I want more transparency from the FBI. That's another huge problem in this country that I hope the new FBI director, Kash Patel, is going to fix, because at this point, I don't trust the FBI in almost anything.
What's up with guns at the State Fair of Texas? I saw there's a bill from Briscoe Cain that could put gun rights in all government leases. Does that overlap with your job any?
I mean, we're still involved in litigation over that, because I think what the legislature already passed was sufficient. Of course, the courts made a different decision, at least temporarily, to let that go forward. They didn't let us have an injunction for this year. We still might win that case, and I still think we should win that case. But his bill would put that issue to rest, and it's a good bill.
All right. You can catch him again tonight. This is Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He's going to be at the Holiday Inn in Tyler, South Broadway, 6 p.m. tonight. Any other thing you'd like to promote while I have you for another minute?
Well, look, it's exciting to me that we have a new president, because that obviously sets a totally different tone for America. The last 4 years, if you think of every issue, whether it's the economy, whether it's the border, whether it's international issues, have been a disaster. Nothing has gone right. And we have an opportunity now for the next 4 years to turn all of that around. So I'm excited.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Ken Paxton on the James Show again. I appreciate your time, sir.
Sure. Have a great day.
And he's going to be in doing a couple stops in Houston tomorrow. He did Fort Worth at noon today, Tyler at 6 o'clock tonight, and then there's one in like Oleander and the Woodlands tomorrow. So if you're further in the southeast part of the WBAP broadcast area, that may be of interest to you, but I don't know. You're kind of stretching our big stick a little, about as far as it can go. All right, coming up next on The James Show, we got to go through some of this audio from Capitol Hill today. I think you would enjoy hearing Kamala Harris certify the election results where she lost. Yeah, we'll do a little victory dance and enjoy ourselves. Coming up in about 4 minutes on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Ken Paxton slated to be on the show at about 3:05. He just wrapped up, I think he might still be in there. There's a meeting with the Tarrant County Republicans that he's at today, but it started at noon, so it's probably over by the time the show started. He has another one coming up at 6 o'clock tonight in Tyler. I'll let you know details about that, but if you have a question you want me to ask him, he's going to be on in about 45 minutes or so. You can send me an email. You can call in and tell Garrett the question. Send me a Facebook message. Just let me know. I'll pass along the questions to him. I had mentioned it on Friday and I already got like 2 questions over the weekend. So, hey, we'll do some more. But back to the top headlines of the day. I'm still trying to break down this Vegas truck bomber situation. We got what we think is his manifesto. He'd sent an email to an online show, sort of like a video show, like podcast, YouTube, whatever you want to call it. And it's just weird because the official story is so weird. This is a guy who just texted his ex about, hey, I got this cool rental. Look, I rented a Cybertruck. They talked about their future plans. And then he bought 2 weapons that really don't make any sense, especially if you're like a career Green Beret guy. Don't you already, I don't know, have weapons? And then you make a bomb that military guys will tell you that's not what they teach us to make. That's actually kind of terrible. I mean, that's not even the right materials. It's low burning or whatever that means. We got some fireworks in there. What is this, an Adam Sandler movie? So shot himself in the head before blowing himself up randomly in front of Trump's building. But I'm under the impression that he's a pro-Trump guy. So I just am having such a hard time with that one. And the New Orleans one happened at the same time. And the frustrating part is the media. Because when you try and dig into it, all right, let's learn more about these guys. What do we know more? There's new information on the New Orleans guy over the weekend that you probably don't know about. We know all about this guy's guns. Okay, yeah, he bought some guns here in Arlington. One of the guns he bought here in Arlington. What does that have to do with anything? Well, it was a private purchase, so it was a legal purchase, and he did it on the 2 days before he did the attack. Okay. And then I can't play you the audio because it's from some TV stations that we don't have agreements with, but they keep using terms semi-automatic pistol and a semi-automatic rifle. And it's so embarrassing. Media people, listen to me. If you don't know anything about guns, don't just throw in scary sounding adjectives because you're like admitting you're a gun dunce. And I'm no like gun nut. People call me and correct me all the time, but the way they try and serve up every little detail about this guy's guns, it just sounds silly to people who just have a cursory basic knowledge of gun. And for people who don't, I know you probably understand, but for the 20% of people who are listening to WBAP who aren't as familiar with guns as you are, I have a good metaphor to help non-gun people understand this. So like whenever they use semi-automatic in the news, it means they're just shoehorning the detail. Imagine if they did this for cars. Yes, it was an automatic transmission car. There was a drive-by at a block party near Keast Park. Suspects were seen in a blue Astro van with an automatic transmission. Well, you'd say, well, that's dumb. What was that to do with anything? Oh, he wasn't having to shift gears on his way out? There was a hit and run in Farmers Branch. Victim was struck by what police believe is a black 2-door truck with an automatic transmission. Oh, well, good thing we know that. That'll totally help us get to the bottom of this mystery. And it's a silly addition for the same reasons. The biggest, most painfully obvious one is that the absolute overwhelming majority of guns used these days are semi-auto, especially the pistols. Just like the overwhelming majority of cars these days are automatic. And what does it matter if it's a semi-automatic pistol versus what, a revolver? Whoop-de-doo. What does that have to do with anything? Because no one was under the impression it was like one of those flintlocks, one of those single shot ones that like the Three Musketeers carried around. You don't have to throw it in there. I get it. You think guns are scary and you want other people to be scared of guns, so you throw in some scary sounding adjectives. So it's not just a regular old single shot musket out there. It's not even the revolver that Yosemite Sam carried. It's a semi-automatic gun. Now, aren't you doubly scared? That's so scary. No, it's not scary. Ridiculous. The reason why you'll also find this frustrating is not just that these people are scared of guns. Do you know the name of anything important about his motivation? Yeah, we know everything about the gun. We know all the details. We know whether it was a private seller, not a gun dealer. We know where it was purchased. We know it was here in Arlington. We know the gun caliber, all that stuff. Do you know the name of his mosque? Oh, yeah. Maybe that is something that could help us get to the bottom of this mystery more so than the private gun transaction from some dude in Arlington. Do you know the name of the imam who was mentoring him through his conversion? Do we know that? Wouldn't that be a more useful piece of information if we were trying to get to the bottom of this mystery? Do you know who he visited in Egypt? Do you know who he visited when he went to Ontario? Do you know the name of the IED or the trigger or the explosive, or was it C4 or was it, I don't know, plastic? Was it tannerite? I mean, do you know anything about that? No. But you know the rifle was semi-automatic, so it wasn't like a lever action rifle like Chuck Connor used in the rifleman set in the damn 1800s. You're useless, media, when you do this. You are failing us when you focus on trying to make everyone scared of guns while having just no bit of journalistic curiosity about the actual details in this case that matter. Aren't these details far more important? Journalists, shouldn't you be digging into what led this guy to do this? Not his backup plan? No, just not even a little bit of journalistic curiosity about the ideology that motivated the murder of 14 of your own neighbors? Who cared whether this guy got a pistol over where'd he get his ISIS flag? My God, the media is sick, man. Shouldn't the media be digging into details on these videos that he uploaded in the hours before the attack? No, but you know, everything's scary about the gun. So they'll spend plenty of time scaring you about the gun, but not really about why the guy did it. Why? It doesn't fit the narrative. Because you know what's more important to understanding why this attack happened, how to keep it safe in the future, how to minimize the risk in the future. The gun's background or this person's background. So if you are in the media and you can hear this, number one, stop referring to guns as semi-automatic. You sound like a child. Sounds like a Fisher-Price My First News report. You're admitting you're ignorant of guns. So that's the first piece of advice. Second piece of advice, why don't you actually look into person's background? Why don't you actually look and find his mosque, find his imam, find where he got the flag, where did he get this idea, who taught him to make the IEDs? Far more important than your scary adjectives. Oh, it's a semi-automatic pistol. I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well just go ahead and put pronouns in your bio. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. There was a civics lesson that happened today. You know, January 6th has kind of taken on a meaning of its own, but really it's just a, I don't know, perfunctory day. It's a ceremonial day where the electors get together and we already know who won. We knew what the results were going to be the night of the election. That's fine. You still have to officially have all the electors get together and officially cast their votes. And then it has to officially be counted. And then they get a chance to do this goofy ceremony where the senators or some proxy from each state comes up and they get to read their votes. And I tell you, when people say that, they don't like biased news or they don't like mixing news with entertainment, yeah, you do. Because if you didn't, it would all look like C-SPAN. And you don't like C-SPAN. I've seen the ratings.
President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Oregon seems to be regular in form and authentic. And it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 8 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 8 votes for vice president.
Hey, all you people who say you want unvarnished, unentertainment, unfluffed up news, you want to do this for 40 minutes?
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania seems to be regular in form and authentic. And it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 19 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 19 votes for vice president.
And then we have to wait like 10 seconds for everyone to get done cheering. Boring as hell, isn't it? But this is how things happen. This is actually one of the greatest features of the American system is the peaceful transfer of power. Man, when you read through history, it doesn't matter if it's Roman Empire or medieval England or what was going on in almost every arena. The thing that tears countries apart and destroys more wealth and ruins more lives and prosperity is people getting into civil wars because there's not a peaceful transfer of power, because the guy who was in power for so long finally died, and then his kids fight over it, or the lords fight over it, or God forbid he doesn't have a son. And so this is a very important part of our civic society, but good Lord, it's boring. Let me go ahead and skip to the Texas part. And wouldn't you know it, C-SPAN skipped when I was recording the Texas part. So you'll hear some gaps in there, but that's not me. That's
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Texas seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 40 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 40 votes for vice president.
Yeah, I had the guns. They weren't really shooting AKs in the halls of Congress. So it happened today, and I think a lot of people got a little bit of enjoyment because the person who has to oversee the official counting of the electors is the president of the Senate, not the majority leader, not the whip, the president. Who's the president of the Senate? Oh, right, the vice president, which means Kamala Harris had to count all of her losing votes and then certify it in front of God and everybody.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris.
I added the gunshot that wasn't in there. Well, they're really cheering in front of her face there, aren't they? Oh, they had to gavel him. Hush. Yeah, so they cheered. And don't worry, when she said Kamala Harris got whatever fewer votes, they cheered for her too. But I think a lot of people are really getting a deep sense of appreciation out of that. Like when people pretend like they really get the fine wine when you go to the wine tasting, they're like, just let it drift over all of your tongue and then do like an inhale, like that, and you stick your nose way in the glass and don't you appreciate that? Can't you really enjoy like the complex aromas, the sort of buttery finishes, the floral notes? I think that's how a big chunk of America felt about listening to that. Can you just tell me the vote counts?
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris.
Wait. Don't finish counting. We're not done cheering yet. Woo! That would be funny if they really could squeeze off rounds like they did in Idiocracy. President Camacho's up there. The other audio that I think you would really relish in that you haven't heard yet because it's from the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes were last night. Did you know? No, I didn't either. I mean, Hollywood's pretty irrelevant. But I do appreciate when the host is Nikki Glaser, because Nikki Glaser has made her bones in the comedy world by absolutely destroying people in roast. You know, the comedy roast. Roast of Justin Bieber, roast of Tom Brady, roast of Martha Stewart. Nikki Glaser, that is her bag. So when she comes in, she's going to have to roast the Golden Globes audience. And wait a second, that sounds like something you would be interested in. So I got a couple of the roasts. I'll play them for you here just because I know you're not going to go back and watch the Golden Globes. Like, oh, darn, I missed the Golden Globes. Says nobody. But here's Nikki Glaser last night.
Now, some of you may know me as a stand-up comedian and from my appearances on Roast, but I am not here to roast you tonight. I want you to know that. And how could I, really? You're all so famous, so talented, so powerful. I mean, you could really do anything. I mean, except tell the country who to vote for. But it's okay. You'll get them next time, if there is one.
And then the other nice little roasty moment I think you'd like.
And Challengers Girl, oh my God, it was so good. I mean, that movie was more sexually charged than Diddy's credit card. I mean, seriously. Oh, no, I know, I'm sorry. I'm upset too. The after party's not going to be as good this year, but we have to move on. I know it, Stanley Tucci Freak-Off just doesn't have the same ring to it, but no baby oil this year, just lots of olive oil, okay?
Stanley Tucci joke. Can we go back to Let Me Gloat? Can we hear the other one real quick? One more time. Just It makes me so happy.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris.
Why don't you gavel him? I want to hear that gavel. There it is. I just need to get gavelled every once in a while. All right. Coming up next, we have the December jobs report that's coming out at the end of the week on Friday. What can you expect from them? We'll talk to Mark Hamrick from Bankrate coming up on The James Show. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Clap your hands, even if they're muffled with gloves. You know, while we're paying a lot of attention to the terror attacks and politics and whatnot, the economy is still chugging along. Mark Hamrick from Bankrate is joining the James Show. We have a jobs report coming out on Friday, and this will be the last one before Donald Trump is sworn in. How much of this jobs report is going to be sort of like the baseline by which we measure this entire next 4 years?
Well, I wouldn't say that you measure it because of 1 month's numbers, James. And the reality is that this data is collected around the 12th of the month. So we'll actually have one more jobs report that would cover the time while the Biden administration is in office. I think, you know, if you're a historian or a statistician or an economist, you look at the totality of the data to the degree that you can do that over the course of a presidential term, and that obviously is 4 years. And there was a lot going on over these past 4 years, and so I think you would say that the economy performed thusly from the time that President Biden took office to the time when President Trump takes the oath of office as well.
What are we expecting in this jobs report on Friday?
It's expected to be a pretty, I would say, normal-looking jobs report to the degree that if we get what is expected, we see about 150,000, 160,000 jobs added during the month. That is in the context of about 6 million total people being hired. The unemployment rate's expected to be about 4.2%. And that is below the long-term average of about 4.7% over the past decade. So if you hear Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell talking about the way that he believes the economy is performing, he would say that the job market is still relatively firm, but it has cooled quite a bit from the time when we had an unemployment rate that was at 3.5%, now in the low 4% range.
How do you think the results of this report on Friday will affect the Federal Reserve's rate cuts going forward?
That's a good question. Obviously, it will depend on what the report looks like. If we get a report that is largely as expected, then the Fed will keep in mind that it has a legally prescribed dual mandate, essentially its mission to balance stable prices and maximum employment. And so that unemployment has risen from 3.5%. They would say that the job market is close to maximum employment, but not at it any longer. And I do think that they may be concerned that inflation is going to continue to be stickier than has been hoped. And they may think that the job market is holding up relatively well. The next policy setting announcement from the Fed is due on January 29th. And after cutting interest rates at the December meeting, the central bank is not expected to change rates at this January meeting. They had previously indicated there might be something like 3 interest rate cuts during 2025. That's a very difficult thing to predict over the course of 12 months. But that suggests that they have some patience. They think they can essentially let their benchmark rate continue to do its work, which is still regarded as restrictive, meaning they still have their foot on the brake of the economy, hoping to continue to bring the rate of inflation down.
Well, I hear different surveys pointing toward optimism, consumer optimism, small business optimism, things like that. How much of this is already baked in the cake, though? So even if we do get a good report, if everyone was already expecting it, a lot of times we don't get much of a boost from that because they say it was already baked in. Do we have a lot of optimism already baked in right now, Mark?
Well, I would say that the stock market, if that's one thing we're talking about, is probably to some degree very much primed for the upcoming earnings season, and that earnings have in recent times tended to surpass expectations. That's a high bar to continue to generate, but economic growth, broadly speaking, at least in the United States, has continued to be above par. In other words, above average. The problem is really the rest of the world in some ways, where the global economy is not performing terribly well. China, Japan, Germany at the top of the list there. And so, we operate within the context of a global economy, and many of our companies are dependent on, at least normal performance on the part of those national economies and regional economies around the world. And obviously, as the new president takes office, and hearing it in the newscast that preceded us, there's a lot of uncertainty associated with what the president-elect plans to do. And the impacts of all of that, of course, are yet to be seen. And so uncertainty is not something that is a favorable thing either for financial markets or operators of business or consumers. To your earliest part of the question about how people view the economy, our bank rate surveys of Americans, as well as another survey that is very closely followed, generated by the University of Michigan on consumer sentiment or consumer attitudes, finds that the way people view the economy, and as I said, the bank rate surveys have indicated this as well, is very much aligned or misaligned with one's political identification. And so if one is a fan of the incoming administration, the optimism tends to be higher. And if one is not a fan of the incoming administration, those consumers may possess less optimism. And I doubt that trend will change, at least in the very near term.
Well, it shouldn't be that stark of a difference because we're all looking at the same data, but you can tell people's biases really shows up sometimes. We are a few years away from the last recession, which means we're a few years closer to the next recession. Do you think it'll happen in 2025, Mark?
It's a good question. It's a survey question for all of the economists that we engage in our quarterly survey. And I can give you a bit of a preview of the one that will be published later this week, and that is the question we ask, what is the percentage risk of a recession over the next year or so? And that risk is still seen as being rather low. I would say it's slightly elevated relative to history, but low relative to the last 3 years. And so we had seen those risks put at about 50-50 at one point when the Federal Reserve was really, raising interest rates sharply and really trying to get inflation down. And right now, I would say that the consensus among the economists is that those risks are about 1 in 3 over the next 12 months. The reality, though, James, if we think about what caused the last 2 recessions that were quite doozies, one was the great financial crisis, with the unemployment rate peaking in October 2009. And then, of course, the one that was associated with COVID. Those were remarkably horrific recessions, even though the last one lasted only about 2 months. But it resulted in historically high unemployment, closer to depression levels for just a short amount of time. And so why do I mention that? Very often it can be that external events that we don't foresee can cause an economic downturn. My hope would be that when the next recession occurs, whenever it occurs, it's more of a so-called garden variety recession and not one of these that ends up, requiring a new chapter in the history books.
Mark Hamrick, what does Bankrate do besides all these great surveys that we cite on WBAP so often?
Oh, thank you for asking. Well, we've been around since 1976, and the main thing is, as the name implies, we monitor interest rates of all kinds all across the country. And so at our free website, bankrate.com, people who are in the market for or just curious about a rate for savings or for borrowing, for credit cards, you can do a search. And we also have all kinds of very neat calculators to help people achieve their financial goals, and lots of great content as well, thanks to my colleagues.
There he is. Mark, thank you very much. This is Mark Hamrick from bankrate.com. Appreciate your economic insight on the James Show. Appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Happy New Year. All right, coming up next, a less fun story. A local woman was kidnapped and robbed by an illegal immigrant. And, of course, is there any doubt open borders have been bad for crime rates around here? But horrifying details coming up next on The James Show. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.